As the crowds behind me are streaming out of the hall, what an awesome, awesome performance and what an awesome piece of art. That was George Lewis's Afterword, an opera about the AACM. You saw on stage the three soloists, Jolene Lamar, Gwendolyn Brown, and Julian Terrell Otis, as well as Steve Schick leading the Ice Ensemble. The piece was written in 2015, and you just heard the West Coast premiere of it. Now, I am very, very lucky to be sitting down right now with Courtney Bryan and Sharan Strange, and we're going to be talking about their premiere tomorrow night on the 10:30 p.m. concert, their premiere of Yet Unheard. Welcome, guys, and so happy to have you on the live stream.
Thank you, Thomas.
First question is you just saw that performance in that opera. What are your thoughts, and what does that opera mean to you guys as far as content and just performance and everything?
Well, I've been really awaiting this time to see the opera in its full production. I studied with George Lewis at Columbia, and I remember when I first started my time at Columbia, the book that came out, his book Power Stronger Than Itself. So since then, I've had a chance to read it and learn a lot about the AACM, but just learn a lot about what it means. The themes that were in the book and in the opera about. Basically making a way out of no way, and just the pride and the organization and all of that. So in the organization, so just to see it in this form as an opera is it's just such a profound inspiration. The musicians are wonderful, the composition was wonderful, and just to see it is just so empowering and inspiring and overwhelming, actually.
Yeah, I would just echo that. It's an epic work. It seems to me that it lives up to that term, epic, and a very important work that talks about the legacy of these forebears of ours, and it's really inspiring. I think about the connections between the sort of audacity that these artists had, and that's important, I think, for us going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's focus right now on tomorrow night's premiere at 10:30 of Yet Unheard. Let's start with the genesis of the project.
Sure. The project started. With Un Lee is the founder of the Dream Unfinished, an activist orchestra. She reached out to me before last year, and she heard a piece that I did that was in response to police brutality called Sanctum, and she was doing a program, and the whole program was on the theme of police brutality, and also it was a fundraiser to raise money for social justice organizations that were dealing with that. And so she asked about a piece, and she told me instrumentation was orchestra, chorus. And then so then the discussion was, where does the text come from, and who would be the poet, and I was we spent time just researching all the possibilities of poets from earlier times and living poets. And my first choice was to reach out to Sharan Strange. I just thought it'd be wonderful if she was interested, and then she was, and so that worked out really well. And from that point, Sharan and I collaborated for many months, and then met Helga Davis, who became a very central part of the piece. And so Helga Davis collaborated with us as well in the creation of the piece. And then the piece was premiered in its full form last year, and tomorrow night is the premiere of the chamber version.
Fantastic. And maybe you can speak now about just the text, writing it and working with it, and then maybe the back and forth of text to music.
Yeah. Well, I conceived the text as a persona piece, and actually I decided that it needed to be a multi-voice persona piece. I wanted Sandra Bland to speak in the piece. I wanted to capture a voice that I thought could represent her experience, her particular experience, but also that speaks in some sense to the experience of Black women in America, and a kind of fraught nature of our existence that tragically culminated for her in the events of July 2015. So I conceived the piece as being centered around her voice, but also incorporating the voice of her community, of her family, and her support system, but also the larger community, because I think it also reflected what was happening in the nation in terms of the resistance that was happening in Black communities to police violence, and also just the legacy of a communal ethos in Black communities for survival. Yeah.
Amazing. And so, based on the program note, the text is not all by you. Yeah. How did you go about kind of formatting the text and making the whole piece, maybe together you can answer this question, making form for the whole work?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say before, I know Courtney has something to add about that, but I just, again, because I was thinking of it as a persona piece, so the main text is the poem that is her voice, but I also incorporated quotes from Patrisse Cullors, who's one of the founders of Black Lives Matter movement, and also Angela Davis. And, I need not say who Angela Davis is, but I felt like those voices were important because I wanted it to be women's voices, even though, again, it speaks to the larger community. But in this moment and given the specificity of the piece, I wanted it to be women's voices. So those were the other voices incorporated into the piece. So there were these mythic voices. There were also the voices of Patrisse Cullors and Angela Davis that were specific, real people, but also represented these sort of archetypal activists, these archetypal sheroes in struggle. Yeah.
And so then through the text, how does the story unfold formally?
It's really just an imagination. Well, it's a telling of what happened to Sandra Bland, but I also wanted to focus on her consciousness as a way to connect. I see the poem as a site of empathy, so I wanted to bring it into this what I felt was the very specific experience of that trauma. Mm-hmm. As a way to also make it a site of empathy for a larger audience to connect with that trauma and understand the need to deal with this problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so now we have text, we go to the music. What did you do to capture the words?
So that process was interesting. When we did the sharing back and forth, and once the poem was set, one thing we did was Sharon, Helga, and I met in a room with the piano, and so So I came with certain musical ideas that came to mind based on the poem, and also we shared ideas. Yeah, so we shared ideas. So I had certain themes in mind, and we improvised based on those ideas, and then there were other ideas that came up through so some of the ideas that. There was a moment where Helga sang a part for "Didn't He Kill Me That Day" that sounded in the sound of a Negro spiritual, and so there were certain elements out of that time that were formed the material, and then from that point it was the actual writing of the piece was a condensed moment. It was like months and months of all of the inspiration and gathering material. And then it was like a very concentrated time of basically going into a zone. Like I've done that more with performing than with composing, but this was a time with composing where I just went into a zone and didn't come out of it until after the performance happened.
So as you were writing, how much was it, this word, I need to change this one word, can you repeat this line, or was it free for all?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, there were some edits along the way, but for the most part, the piece came, there was a lot of sketching beforehand of musical materials, but as far as like the flow of the piece, just kind of kept going and let the piece kind of reveal itself.
That's the best way. Yeah. Now, you mentioned Helga Davis as the soloist. Can you maybe talk to the beginning of finding each other, both just as human beings, but also artistically? You mentioned that a little bit.
Yeah.
And also, what specifically did you write for her,
Yeah, so finding each other, as far as the Dream Unfinished event, there was one big event that this piece was premiered at, but along the way there were a series of events, and one of them I did a program on the music of Nina Simone as an example of someone, a great example of someone with music and activism. And at that event, Helga Davis was there, and I'd already heard of her, and so it was great to meet. And then there's conversations, and then I approached her about doing the piece. So that was that stage, and then and as far as when I said the writing for, there was a certain part that was my decisions as composer, and there's certain parts of that we came up with together. So that was already in the piece. And so it would have been a different piece had it been a different vocalist. And so it's just really special to have that kind of collaborative genesis,
Yeah.
What I'm gathering from this project, it's very organic, very, three minds coming together and making this thing. You guys have already spoken to this, but maybe you can go a little further. The program note talks about art to engage with issues of social justice, and obviously critical to this work. Maybe you can speak to it on a larger scale and on other things you guys have worked on together, separately, either, anything.
I guess I've done just various things in terms of connecting up with other people. I guess, as a poet, I came out of this experience of creating a writers collective, and we had all various voices and approaches in our work. But for me, it was this kind of, again, it's like this ethos of community, and what can we do in terms of making room for more voices in the world? In my case, the literary world, but I see these parallels with the classical music world, the contemporary classical music world. So I think, I guess in a broader political sense, it's really just a sense of making room for more voices, and seeing everyone's humanity and everyone's experience as equal. So I guess I feel like, in a sense, the best way to put it is just to kind of to have a thread of a theme of empathy throughout whatever I write. So yeah.
Fantastic. And
for me, I would say that if there's something to describe my music, it wouldn't be genre, but it would be that I write mostly sacred music. And so it's a sacred in an expansive sense. Sometimes it's directly related to religious beliefs, and other times it's some of my values that are related to that. And so what I found is that in recent times, I feel like it's an extension of that focus to focus on, it's not just political issues. I've been particularly invested in this issue of police brutality and just the state of race in this country. Those larger topics, but that's what's something that's been calling to me to deal with through my music. And so I would say I write sacred music, and that politics is a part of that.
Fantastic. So we're running out of time. Before we go, can you both say upcoming projects and where the listeners can follow you guys?
Well, upcoming projects, I guess I've just sort of embarked on doing a series of audio poems. I was invited to participate in an exhibition on Black intuition, imagination, and creativity. So I think I kind of want to follow that theme, and so just working with sound more. I think I got that inspiration from working with Courtney and Helga. So I think I just want to keep exploring that, and kind of working with. And then there's another project that I'm working on around this contemporary moment around political struggle, and it's a project that's still in progress. So the title keeps changing, but in any case, it's a collection of poems that really sort of deals with the kind of interiority of being Black in this moment, in this historical moment, and in this very conflicted, political atmosphere. Yeah.
And
I have a number of composition projects coming up. I'm scheduled to write for the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra.
fantastic.
And I'm writing for Quint's contemporary vocal ensemble. In fact, it's going to be a requiem, which I consider to be an extension of some of my interests. So I'm going to write that for Quint's. I've been talking with Pi Ensemble about a possible project that also has some theme of social justice and music. And I have some another collaborative projects. I'm working with this artist, Tiona McClouden, and we're doing a piece. We're going to do a sound installation that's inspired by a piece that Florence Price and Langston Hughes did together. So those are some of the projects. And as far as performance, I've been doing a lot of performing and studying Alice Coltrane's music. So I'm planning to continue performing that music and also hope to write about some of her music as well.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to tomorrow night on the 10:30 p.m. concert, the world premiere of the new chamber version of Courtney Bryan and Sharan Strange's Yet Unheard.